The winding up of year 2024 provides an opportunity to x-ray the activities of the judicial sector and how it fared during the year. This is the focus of my conversation with a senior legal practitioner, life bencher, pioneer chairman NBA section on business law, and current chairman committee on the protection of legal business for the NBA. I began my chat with Mr. George Etomi by getting his views on the recent presidential media charts of President Bola Tinubu.
Yes, I listened to the media chat. It was refreshing that at least he gave his first media chat since he assumed office. And as to giving himself a pass mark, I don't think anyone would expect to do anything less because he's in the middle of major reforms that have turned the system upside down the way we understand it. And the benefits have not yet crystallized, and he's asking us to stay the course. There's a plan, there's a consequence, and he's just asking Nigerians to tarry a while with him, and they will get the benefits. Yeah, for somebody who's assessing himself, it's okay for himself for him to give himself a pass mark. But if you spoke, I believe, to the ordinary, not just the ordinary Nigerian, the average Nigerian, I mean, they are at a loss as to when this whole hardship will end. There's hardship in the land. On the back of the several deaths we heard from Anambra State to Abuja to Ibadan, all tied to food. It just sort of gives you a graphic illustration of where people find themselves today. And these measures have not been, in my opinion, properly articulated and explained to Nigerians so that you can give timelines. And this is why there's this general accusation that major decisions were taken without the consequences being properly assessed. Otherwise, the timing would have made a lot of difference. If we're going to take away subsidies, which we agree, we're creating major distortions in the economy, then there must have been running pari passu plans about what these savings would be used for. And by now, we should begin to feel that effect. But today, what appears to be in the face of everyone is just plain hardship. Everywhere you go, people are, those who have cars barely able to maintain it. Salary increases. It took a whole load of negotiations for basic salaries to be increased to 70,000. And what is 70,000 today? Private sector is under pressure because now you can't keep good hands, because they're either going abroad or they're going to find some other ways of augmenting the salaries at the end. So you see there is general pressure on the system, and I really think the president should engage a lot more. This once in every 18 months just isn't going to cut it. We should be a president who should be actively engaged with the media, because at times your aides might not be able to articulate these policies as well as you, who is actually in the driving seat. So that's why we need to hear a bit more from him. But it was refreshing hearing from him. But did it give all of us the comfort we were looking for? I think the jury is out there.
And on top of that, he has said that he's not going to reduce his cabinet. And Nigerians are going through suffering. Meanwhile, he has a bloated cabinet, which he has said.
Yeah. Again, those are the inconsistencies, if you will, about the appeal for people to understand vis-a-vis what they expect you to be doing. This clamor for government to cut back on expenses has been on, even if these subsidies were not taken. As the sacrifices are being made, no one is feeling that government is cutting back. And, well, yes, he chose the ministers, 48 ministers. I mean, if he could work honestly with half of that number, because it's not really the numbers of the ministers, it's the quality of the ministers you put together. And if they properly delegate, you will achieve the twin benefits of not only cutting back on expenses, but actually getting a leaner and more effective government. I still think you should have a second look at that.
Let's come back to the judiciary, our sector.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw that the president increased the allowances and remuneration of judicial officers after so much clamor for that more than 10 years ago since it was last done. And now there's increased remuneration for judges and judicial officers. But how well would you say, despite that the judiciary has fared this year and lived up to expectation, delivering the kind of services that we all want to see?
I must say it saddens me when I see this sort of hold the executive have on the legislative branch of government. So everything is spoken of in terms of magnanimity. He has increased their salaries. He has done this. I've built them houses. I have done that. To be honest, that's what is affecting the effective delivery of justice, because the executive have such a firm hold on the judiciary. It's only lip service that paid to this whole issue of the independence of the judiciary. The truth is that the Constitution anticipates that we should have a judiciary that's treated pretty much the way the legislature is treated and the executive is treated. So their monies, once voted for, should be directly disbursed. They must have an administrative machinery that deals with it. Because the problem you have with the executive doing stuff for the judiciary is that once politics gets in the way, it becomes a problem. And this is one singular threat we have to judicial independence. So, but having said that, he still deserves a lot of credit for being the president who, like you said, after nearly 10 years of clamor, basically bit the bullet and decided to do a lot of good for the judiciary. I'm not surprised about that, because he once headed Lagos State, and Lagos State has always been in the forefront of ensuring that the judiciary fare very well. But I think we should begin to look at something that's nationwide, because as economic activities increase, as political activities increase, as the number of judges increase, you expect a commensurate rise in the quality of judgments that are delivered. And you can't get that if you have the judiciary still slaving under the legislative arm.
I'm glad you talked about quality, because the perception of legal services sector appears to be at an all-time low right now. There's a huge distrust of lawyers and the judiciary. Remember that the last survey ranked the legal sector high on corruption, up there with police officers. So what do you think the sector can do to regain public trust and confidence?
Candidly, the NBA president has his work cut out for him. It's not something I joyfully receive. It's not news I joyfully receive, that there's this perception in the public domain that the third arm of government is not living up to the expectation of the ordinary citizens, and something just needs to be done. From the way we take in lawyers, the law school churns out about 6,000 lawyers every year. What happens to them after they get called, we don't know, because the legal services market is not deep enough to absorb a substantial number of those lawyers that are called every year. And the risk you run is that many of them will grow to have experience outside a structured legal environment. And that's where the danger occurs. They don't know the ethics. They don't know the peculiar nuances in the profession. And if they have the right connections, they go into politics, they become your legislators. If they have the right contacts, they become your judges. That's where the danger lies. So the legal profession must have a serious introspection and see how they can begin to retool so as to regain the public confidence. Look, the mere fact that it takes you 5-6 years to even get a simple civil suit decided is a problem in itself. And most of these decisions that attract public opprobrium are usually political cases. I mean, until recently, we were talking about a country where you have in Kano 2 MS, until recently 2 deputy governors in Edo State, again until recently 2 legislative houses in River State. I mean, is there no certainty in the law? Don't we have a system where you can say if A happens, B is the consequence? And why should judges in the lower bench deviate from clearly spelled out rules and precedents from the Supreme Court? And why is nothing happening to them? No matter how you want to defend the legal profession, the truth out there is that we all exist because to please society. And when the very people who hold us in the sort of esteem in which they hold us begin to feel uncomfortable, we are the ones who should begin to reassess the way we go about our business. I keep saying that it's just a few judges that are threatening to tarnish the image of the large majority. And for the sake of the overall good, we should not let that happen. So everybody, lawyers, judges, politicians, even the citizens, is justice for all and justice by all. So citizens themselves too must hold themselves to the finest sense of behavior. You just can't behave in any fashion and then expect a court to support you because you have the right connections. So the pressure is all around. It's a system I believe we all covet, but it's a system we must all work to protect.
Let me take you back to something that you said when you were answering that question about starting from the law graduates that we churn out from the schools who don't get absorbed by the system and then who become your politicians if they have the right connections and get into your state houses of assembly and even politics and all of that. The president of the bar, I'm aware, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Famosigwe, appointed you chairman of the Committee of the Protection of Legal Business. So what is that committee, your committee, doing? How do we deal with the increased number of lawyers that we're churning out? 6,000, over 6,000 every year that are called to the bar. Very few, like you've identified, can be absorbed into the legal profession. So how are we dealing with all of that to ensure that there is quality, even in the kind of lawyers that get into all of these other sectors that you mentioned?
I mean, yeah, it's a major source of headache, I must tell you. When I got called to the bar, we were barely over 200 in number when I got called to the bar. Admittedly, this was about 47 years ago. But between now and then, if you ever told anyone that you'll get to that point where you are churning out nearly 6,000 lawyers, which by itself may not be a bad thing, but the problem is if you do not have depth in the legal services market to absorb these numbers, then my problem is that you are churning out numbers that can deviate from what proper practice should be. My committee essentially is to identify the things that threaten legal services and see what can be done to protect them. For example, the familiar issue of the globalization of legal services, where foreign lawyers are seeking to come to practice here, how we can manage that in such a way that it could be beneficial both ways. That's one aspect of it. Then we also begin to see incursion by, let me say, adjunct professions. The accountants are having full legal departments. Some people are incorporating companies. Some are giving legal advisory services in manners not allowed by the Legal Practitioners Act. So those should be stopped and dealt with. Then you're also dealing with this very spectacle we talked about. Lawyers who've just generally gone rogue. In fact, should I even say there are fake lawyers, as me and you, and as we know, and all that. So the combination of all that, we believe if we can have robust answers to how this can be balanced. Our desire is to see a legal services market that is deepened. And if we begin to put it at numbers, let's say, for example, we don't keep good statistics in this country, but if we can create a legal services market that can ensure that in fees there's a substantially good amount of money, because if foreign lawyers want to come into your domain, there must be something good in here. So if we can work it such that there is enough to go around, then you find that law practices will begin to expand, will begin to invest in technology, we begin to collaborate more, and we begin to get those, yes, and then the absorptive capacity of law firms will increase, so that these numbers, as they get churned out of law school, will mop them up. But I quickly add, we also have to go back to the root, and that is how they get admitted into law schools in the first place. Because there's a lot of politics that goes into the accreditation of law faculties. And when any new university opens, I don't know if you notice the pattern, one of the first things they establish is law faculty. And it's understandable. Everybody wants to be associated with a lawyer. Every parent wants to have a lawyer in the house. And all. And then they say it's the only professional course if you're doing the arts and all that. But that expectation comes along with it so much responsibility. And I think that's what we will begin to emphasize, so that you can take the pains to ensure that you are grooming lawyers who understand the legal system.